The massive window of the Galactic Council chamber reflected Ambassador Reed's imposing figure as he stood watching the stars. His scaled skin glimmered under the light of 3 moons, and his claws clicked softly against the polished floor. Like all Razaks, he stood nearly 9 feet tall, his powerful frame built to withstand the crushing gravity of their homeworld. The other council members kept their distance. They always did. Even after 50 years of peaceful cooperation, the sight of a Razak still triggered primitive fear responses in most species. Reed didn't blame them. Evolution had shaped his people into the perfect predators. Reinforced bones, layered muscles, razor-sharp claws, and enhanced senses. Their world had demanded nothing less. Ambassador Reed, a soft voice called from behind. The council session will begin shortly. Reed turned to face the speaker, a small, delicate-looking being from the Lumini species. The aide's translucent skin quivered slightly, but to their credit, they maintained their position. Reed respected that. "Thank you," he rumbled, keeping his voice low to avoid frightening them further. "I will be there momentarily." As the aide hurried away, Reed allowed himself a small smile. His people's rise to power had been swift and absolute. When the Galactic Council first discovered the Razak homeworld, they had expected to find only primitive life forms. After all, how could anything develop advanced civilization on a planet with twice standard gravity, extreme temperature variations, and aggressive predators at every turn? Instead, they found cities, technology, space travel. The Razaks had not just survived their deadly world, they had conquered it. The council chamber filled slowly as representatives from 200 species took their seats. Reed observed them all: the floating gas forms of the Mist Collective, the crystalline structures of the Silicon Alliance, the delicate insectoids of the Hive networks. All of them evolved on gentle worlds with moderate gravity and stable climates. All of them soft. The council leader, a tall, willowy being named First Speaker Voss, called the session to order. "We gather today to discuss an unusual discovery in Sector 7, they announced, their translator converting the musical tones into standard speech. "Our long-range sensors have detected radio signals from an unknown world." Reed's interest peaked. New civilizations were rare these days. Initial scans indicate the planet is. First Speaker Voss paused, double-checking their data. A death world. Murmurs filled the chamber. Reed's secondary heart began to beat faster. In all the known galaxy, only the Razak homeworld carried that classification. "Show us," Reed commanded, his powerful voice cutting through the chatter. The holographic display activated, showing a blue-green world spinning slowly in space. Data scrolled alongside it, and Reed's eyes widened as he read. Gravity, 1.1 times galactic standard. High, but not exceptional. But then, extreme temperature variations from poles to equator. Active tectonic plates causing frequent earthquakes. Multiple competing apex predators. Highly variable terrain including mountains, deserts, and deep oceans. Atmospheric oxygen levels supporting large fauna. Frequent extreme weather events. Dangerous levels of background radiation from the star. Impossible, someone whispered. Nothing sapient could evolve there. Yet the radio signals were clear, not just random emissions, but complex communications. Music, mathematical sequences, language. Reed studied the display with growing excitement. Finally, another species that would understand. Another race of survivors, of warriors, of apex predators like his own people. "I volunteer to lead the first contact mission," Reed announced. The chamber erupted in shocked discussions. A Razak ambassador personally leading a mission was unprecedented. First Speaker Voss studied him carefully. "The planet appears even more dangerous than your homeworld, Ambassador. We should proceed with caution." Reed's mouth split in what his people considered a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Exactly. Whatever species survive that world will respect strength. They will respect the Razaks. We may even find worthy allies in them. The council voted. The mission was approved. As Reed left the chamber to prepare his ship, he felt a thrill of anticipation. Soon, the Razaks would no longer be alone. Soon, they would meet their equals. If only he knew how wrong he was about being their equal. The Razak research vessel, Star Claw, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Ambassador Reed stood on the bridge, his massive frame casting a shadow over the control panels. The ship's sensors immediately began collecting data about this new solar system. "Report," Reed ordered, his deep voice echoing through the bridge. The ship's science officer, Tech Leader Dale, worked his clawed hands over the glowing screens. 8 planets, sir. The third one is our target. But, he paused, double-checking his readings. These numbers can't be right. Reed moved closer, his heavy footsteps making the deck plates vibrate. Explain. The planet's biosphere is chaos, sir. Dale's scales shifted color slightly, showing his confusion. We're detecting thousands of different ecosystems. Deserts hot enough to cook our kind. Frozen wastelands colder than our worst winters. Oceans deeper than any we've recorded. And the life forms. He shook his head in disbelief. The main screen filled with images as the ship's sensors cataloged Earth's species, massive water creatures that dwarfed their survey vessel, tiny organisms that could kill with a single bite, flying predators that ruled the skies, and countless others, all surviving together in a complex web of predator and prey. How can anything survive here? Officer Pine wondered aloud from her security station. The temperature shifts alone should make advanced civilization impossible. Reed watched as more data poured in. The humans, as they called themselves, hadn't just survived. They had spread across their entire planet, building cities in every hostile environment their world offered. They had structures in the freezing poles, settlements in scorching deserts, and floating cities on their vast oceans. Look at their buildings, Dale pointed out. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. Their cities are full of art, entertainment venues, places with no survival purpose at all. The bridge crew fell silent as they processed this information. On their homeworld, every structure, every action, every decision was about survival. The idea of building something purely for enjoyment was foreign to them. We're picking up their communications now, the communications officer reported. Their information network is extensive and open. They broadcast everything. Reed watched as images from Earth's internet flowed across the screens. Humans playing in the snow, swimming in their deadly oceans, climbing mountains for fun, running massive distances in something called marathons. They treat their death world like a playground, Pine said, her voice mixing awe and horror. A new alert caught their attention. The humans had spotted them. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, in multiple languages. Reed straightened his ceremonial armor. This was the moment that would define his career. Put it through. The screen lit up with an image that made every Razak on the bridge freeze. The human on the screen was small, maybe a third of their size. No claws, no armor, no visible natural weapons at all. Just soft skin and a strange arrangement of fur on top of their head. And it was smiling. Greetings, unidentified vessel, the human said, speaking in clear, calm tones. This is Captain James of the Earth Defense Force. Welcome to Sol System. We've been expecting someone to show up eventually. Reed exchanged looks with his crew. They'd been expecting contact. And they were so casual about it. I am Ambassador Reed of the Razak Empire, he responded formally. We come seeking diplomatic contact with your species. The human's smile grew wider. Wonderful. We'd be happy to arrange a meeting. Would you prefer to dock at our orbital station, or should we come to you? We're flexible. The casual offer to enter either ship stunned the Razaks. On their world, such trust would be unthinkable. Every meeting was a careful dance of power and territory. "We would be honored to dock at your station," Reed managed to say. "Perfect. Sending coordinates now. Fair warning, though. Our artificial gravity is set to Earth standard. Hope that won't be a problem for you folks." As the transmission ended, Reed looked at his crew. "They're not afraid," he said slowly. "A species from the deadliest world we've ever seen, and they're not afraid of us at all." "Should we be worried about that, sir?" Pine asked quietly. Reed watched Earth rotate slowly on their main screen. "Yes," he said finally. "I think we should." The docking procedure was flawless, but Ambassador Reed felt anything but comfortable as his team prepared to exit their ship. The human space station's gravity pulled at them differently than they were used to. Not stronger, just strange. "Remember," Reed addressed his team, "we are the first Razaks these humans will ever meet. We must show them proper respect as fellow Deathworlders." He looked at each member of his 5-person diplomatic team, all chosen for their strength and experience. The airlock hissed open. Captain James stood waiting with his own team, and for the first time, the Razaks saw humans up close. They were so small, so exposed without scales or armor. Their bodies looked soft, covered only in thin fabric uniforms, yet they stood straight and confident. "Ambassador Reed." Captain James stepped forward, extending his hand in what their research said was a traditional Earth greeting. "Welcome aboard Station Aurora." Reed stared at the offered hand. The human was willing to put such a vulnerable body part within striking distance of a Razak's claws. Carefully, moving slowly to avoid any accidents, Reed matched the gesture. The handshake that followed changed everything. The human's grip was firm, surprisingly firm. Reed could feel the strength in those small muscles, the confident pressure that spoke of power held in check, just like a Razak would do. "Please follow me," James said cheerfully. "We've prepared a tour of the station. Though I should warn you, our artificial gravity sometimes fluctuates between decks. Hope nobody gets motion sick." The Razak team followed, watching in amazement as the humans moved through their station. They didn't lumber or stomp like Razaks. They seemed to flow, their bodies adapting instantly to every change in gravity or direction. "This is our main hydroponic garden," James explained as they entered a vast chamber filled with plants. "We grow about 30% of our food here." Tech leader Dale scanned the plants with his portable device. "These are all from Earth, but they're from completely different environments." "Oh yes." A human scientist named Dr. Miller joined in. "We've learned to grow Arctic berries right next to tropical fruits. It's all about controlling the microenvironments." Just then, an alert sounded through the station. Red lights flashed. "Minor hull breach in Sector 7, announced a calm voice over the speakers. "Repair team needed." The Razaks tensed, ready for emergency protocols. On their ships, a hull breach meant immediate crisis response, but the humans barely reacted. "Don't worry," James said, noticing their concern. "Just some space debris. Happens all the time. Our repair team will handle it." Through a nearby window, they watched as 2 humans in spacesuits casually walked across the outer hull. They moved with perfect confidence in the vacuum of space, their tools making quick work of the damage. "You're not concerned?" Reed asked. "They're exposed to space. One mistake." James shrugged. "They train for this. Actually, Pete out there, the one with the blue stripe, he says spacewalking is relaxing. Claims it helps him think." The Razaks exchanged bewildered looks. Relaxing. In the void of space. As the tour continued, they saw more examples of what they considered impossible behavior. Humans playing zero-gravity sports in their off time. Engineers working inside tight maintenance tunnels that would make a Razak claustrophobic. A cook tasting extremely spicy Earth food would burn even through Razak scales. "And this is our gym," James said later, showing them a room full of exercise equipment. "Nothing special, just basic equipment to help us stay fit in space." Reed examined the weights. These are very heavy for your size. Oh yeah, we have to maintain our muscle mass up here. Want to try a friendly competition? See who can lift more. The Razak diplomatic team froze. Was this small human actually challenging them to a show of strength? Reed looked at James carefully. You understand that we evolved on a high-gravity world. That our muscles are naturally much denser than yours. James smiled. Sure, but you might be surprised. We may not look tough, but humans are pretty adaptable. It's kind of our thing. Looking at that confident smile, Reed felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Doubt. There was something about these humans, something his people had never encountered before. They weren't just survivors of a deadly world. They were something else entirely. The station's testing chamber was large enough to hold both species comfortably. After Captain James's challenge, the Razak science team had requested formal physical trials to better understand human capabilities. The humans had agreed with surprising enthusiasm. First test. Pure strength, Dr. Miller announced, standing near a modified weightlifting machine. We'll test both species' maximum lift capacity. Commander Stone, the strongest of the Razak delegation, stepped forward first. His massive frame easily lifted the weights, adding more and more until he reached an impressive 800 kilograms. The other Razaks nodded in approval. Surely no human could match this. Then Walker, a human engineer who looked no different from the others, stepped up to the machine. Ready? She asked, gripping the bars. The Razaks watched, expecting her to struggle. Instead, their jaws dropped as she began lifting, her supposedly weak muscles flexing smoothly. She didn't match Stone's weight, but she managed 400 kilograms, far more than should have been possible for her size. How? Tech leader Dale demanded, checking his scanners. Your muscle density doesn't explain this. Efficient leverage, Walker explained between deep breaths, plus good technique. Humans may not be the strongest, but we know how to use what we have. The next test was endurance. The two species would run on treadmills until exhaustion. Stone ran for an impressive 2 hours before needing to stop, his powerful body designed for bursts of speed rather than lengthy exercise. The human runner, a station crew member named Thompson, just kept going, and going, and going. 4 hours now, Dale muttered, watching his instruments. Their heart rate is elevated but stable. They're sweating, but they're barely tired. Persistence hunting, Captain James explained proudly. It's how we caught prey back on Earth. We couldn't outrun them, but we could outlast them. Humans can run longer than almost any other species on our planet. The third test involved reaction speed. Here, the Razaks were confident. Their natural predator reflexes were legendary. A series of lights flashed randomly around the room. The goal was to touch each light as quickly as possible. Stone moved impressively fast, his powerful legs launching him across the chamber, clawed hands striking each target with precision. The human contestant, Security Officer Rivers, moved differently. Where Stone used raw power, Rivers seemed to flow like water, each movement flowing into the next. She didn't match Stone's individual strike speed, but she read patterns faster, predicted locations better, and used the room's layout to her advantage. Intelligence test next, Dr. Miller suggested. No need. Reed interrupted, watching Rivers help Stone up after he stumbled. We've seen enough. The humans turned to him, curious. You don't want to continue testing? James asked. Reed shook his head slowly. We came here expecting to find equals. Other Deathworlders like us. But we were wrong. You're not like us at all. The humans tensed slightly, but Reed raised a hand in peace. You're something we've never seen before, he continued. We survived our world by becoming stronger, faster, tougher. But you survived by becoming adaptable. You're not the strongest, but you know how to use leverage. You're not the fastest, but you never stop. You're not naturally armored, So you learned to predict and avoid danger instead. James nodded slowly. Every environment on Earth tried to kill us, so we learned to adapt to all of them. More than that, Dale added, reviewing his data. Your bodies are full of redundancies. Multiple organ functions, ability to survive losing blood, incredibly efficient cooling system through sweating, fast healing, and the ability to extract nutrients from almost anything. You're built to survive anything. And you do it all while remaining playful, Reed said, still amazed by this concept. You treat deadly situations as challenges to overcome, not threats to fear. Captain James smiled. Life's more fun that way, don't you think? Before Reed could answer, the station's alarm system blared to life. But this wasn't the casual alert from before. This was different. This was serious. Multiple unidentified ships just dropped out of FTL, the station's AI announced. They're not responding to hails. Weapons detected. The humans' expressions changed instantly. The casual friendliness vanished, replaced by focused alertness. Reed watched in fascination as these soft-looking creatures suddenly moved with predatory grace. Well, Ambassador, James said, his voice carrying a new edge. Looks like you'll get to see how humans handle real trouble. The station's command center buzzed with activity as humans moved with practiced efficiency. Ambassador Reed and his team watched as these seemingly relaxed creatures transformed into focused warriors. 3 hostile vessels, Drachnid-class raiders, Officer Rivers reported, her fingers dancing over the control panels. They're moving to surround the station. Drachnids, Stone growled. Space pirates. They prey on research stations and civilian ships. Very dangerous. Captain James nodded, but didn't seem particularly worried. How do Razaks usually handle them? Direct combat, Reed answered. We use our superior strength to board their ships and defeat them in close combat. They fear us. Interesting approach. James smiled, but it wasn't the friendly smile from before. This was the smile of a predator. We prefer to be a bit more creative. Walker, how's our temperature control system? The engineer grinned. Ready to go, Captain. And I've got those modifications you requested last month. Reed looked between them, confused. You're going to adjust the station's temperature at a time like this? Not exactly, James said. Rivers, get me station-wide. The comm system crackled to life, and James's voice echoed through every corridor. Attention all personnel. Protocol Winter is now active. I repeat, Protocol Winter is active. All teams to designated positions. The Razaks watched in amazement as the humans moved with even greater purpose. Some rushed to put on spacesuits, while others manned defensive positions. First warning shot incoming, Rivers announced. The station shuddered slightly as energy weapons impacted its shields. Return message from the Drachnids. Communications reported. They're demanding we surrender the station and all research data. James laughed. Send them our standard response. A simple text message appeared on the screen. Come and take it. You're provoking them, Dale asked, incredulous. They outnumber us 3-1. Numbers aren't everything, Walker said, still working at her console, especially when you don't know what you're really fighting. The pirates took the bait. 2 ships moved closer to the station, preparing for boarding actions. They're using cutting beams on airlocks 3 and 7, Rivers reported. Perfect, James said. Walker, execute Protocol Winter. What happened next amazed the Razak delegation. The station's temperature control system, which they had assumed was just for comfort, revealed its true purpose. Targeted sections of the station plunged to temperatures cold enough to freeze atmospheric moisture instantly. Boarding parties have breached airlocks 3 and 7, Rivers reported calmly. They're entering the frozen zones now. Through security cameras, they watched as the Drachnid raiders charged in, only to find themselves slipping on unexpectedly icy floors. Their weapons, calibrated for normal temperatures, began to malfunction in the extreme cold. Phase 2, James ordered. The station's artificial gravity shifted suddenly, but only in specific sections. Raiders who were already struggling for footing found themselves thrown against walls, then ceilings, then back to floors. Most of their boarding parties are incapacitated, Rivers reported. The few still standing are retreating. Their ships are powering up weapons again, Dale warned. They won't fire, James said confidently. Not now that Walker has control of their navigation systems. Reed stared at the human engineer, who was still typing casually at her console. You hacked their ships, while defending against a boarding action. Multitasking is a human specialty, she replied with a shrug. Plus, they were so focused on our weak defenses that they didn't guard their computer systems very well. The main screen showed the Drachnid ships starting to drift, their engines and weapons going dark. Should we show them how Raziks handle pirates? Stone offered, flexing his claws. James shook his head. No need for close combat. Station defense teams are already boarding their ships through their own breached airlocks. The raiders will wake up in custody, never having landed a single effective blow. Reed looked around the command center. Not a single human seemed stressed or worried. They had turned a pirate attack into what appeared to be a routine exercise. You planned for this, he realized. The temperature controls, the gravity systems, everything about this station. It's all designed to be a weapon. Of course, James replied. Humans learned long ago that anything can be a tool or a weapon. It just depends on how creatively you think. He paused, then added with a grin, though I have to admit, having some Razak allies nearby made the pirates think twice about their life choices. Looking at these soft-skinned creatures who had just defeated 3 warships without firing a shot, Reed understood something crucial. Humans weren't just adaptable. They were devastating. The meeting room on Station Aurora was quiet as Ambassador Reed reviewed the battle footage for the 3rd time. 3 days had passed since the pirate attack, and the Razak delegation was still processing what they had witnessed. Play it again, Reed requested, focusing on how the humans had turned basic life support systems into defensive weapons. Show me the temperature control sequence. Dr. Miller, who had joined them for this analysis session, nodded. It's actually based on an old Earth war technique. During winter campaigns, armies would sometimes use the cold itself as a weapon against their enemies. You learned warfare from your own planet's seasons. Tech leader Dale asked, his scales shifting color in amazement. We learned everything from our planet, Captain James said, entering the room with fresh data tablets. Every environment on Earth taught us something useful. Deserts taught us patience and resource management. Oceans taught us to respect forces bigger than ourselves. Mountains taught us to plan ahead and find safe paths. Reed turned from the screen. But you were not warriors originally. Our scientists have studied your evolutionary path. You were prey animals first. James smiled. Exactly. And that might be the biggest difference between our species, Ambassador. You evolved as apex predators. You never had to fear anything on your world except the environment itself. While you... Reed's eyes widened with sudden understanding. You evolved running from predators stronger than you. Running from them, hiding from them, and eventually outsmarting them, James confirmed. When you can't win with strength, you learn to win with cleverness. When you can't fight directly, you learn to set traps. When you can't overpower something, you learn to use its own strength against it. Dale was checking data on his tablet. Your history shows countless examples of smaller human forces defeating larger ones through unconventional methods. We call it asymmetric warfare, Dr. Miller explained. Using the environment, using psychology, using an enemy's expectations against them. Like with those pirates, they expected a direct confrontation because that's how most species fight. They never imagined we'd turn the station itself into a weapon. Reed stood and walked to the window, looking out at Earth floating below. We came here expecting to find equals. Instead, we found partners, James suggested. Different approaches to survival can complement each other. The conversation was interrupted by Walker entering with urgent news. "Captain, the Galactic Council just received our report about the pirate attack. They're concerned." Concerned? Reed turned back from the window. "About what?" "About us," James said simply. "About humans. Let me guess. They're worried that we're too dangerous, too unpredictable." Walker nodded. "Some council members are suggesting restrictions on human expansion into space. They're calling us an unprecedented threat to galactic stability." Reed surprised everyone by laughing. It was a sound few had ever heard a Razak make. "They fear you," he said, "not because you're strong like us, but because you're innovative. Unpredictable. You turn heating systems into weapons. You treat vacuum exposure as routine. You find ways to grow Arctic plants in space." He paused. "You turn every challenge into an opportunity to learn and adapt." "That's just how we survived Earth," James said. "Our world never stopped trying to kill us, so we never stopped learning new ways to live." Reed made a decision. "I will speak to the Council. The Razak Empire will stand with humanity." The humans looked surprised. "You'd support us?" Dr. Miller asked. "Even though we're so different from you?" "Because you are different," Reed explained. "My people became strong to survive our world. But you became ingenious. You learned to adapt, to innovate, to turn weakness into strength. The galaxy needs both approaches." Captain James extended his hand, just as he had on that first meeting. "Partners, then. Strength and innovation together." Reed took the offered hand carefully. "Partners. Though I must warn you, some council members will still oppose this alliance. They will see our combined capabilities as an even greater threat." James's smile turned slightly predatory. "Then they'll learn what humans and Razaks can accomplish together. After all, adapting to new challenges is what we do best." Looking at that smile, Reed felt both excitement and pity. Excitement for this new alliance, and pity for anyone who would stand against it. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth was the deadliest crucible of all. 5 years after the historic first meeting between humans and Razaks, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. The once separate seating areas now showed humans and Razaks sitting together, a physical symbol of their growing alliance. Ambassador Reed stood at the podium, his massive frame no longer inspiring fear among the other delegates. Instead, they listened with respect as he presented the latest achievements of the Human Razak Cooperative. "In just 5 years," Reed announced, "our joint exploration teams have mapped regions of space previously considered too dangerous to survey. The combining of human adaptability with Razak resilience has opened new frontiers." On the massive display behind him, images showed human Razak crews working together, a human engineer teaching Razaks how to modify their equipment for better efficiency, a Razak warrior helping humans design stronger armor, ships crewed by both species, exploring the most challenging environments in space. Captain James, now Admiral James, stepped forward to continue the presentation. "Our latest achievement is the successful colonization of the Magnus 7 system," he said, showing images of a harsh but resource-rich planet. "A world previously considered uninhabitable is now home to our first joint colony." The council members murmured in amazement. Magnus 7 had been written off as too dangerous for settlement, with its extreme radiation levels and volatile atmosphere. Yet the images showed thriving settlements protected by shields designed by human engineers and built with Razak materials. "But perhaps our greatest achievement," James continued, "is what we've learned from each other. The Razaks have taught us the value of physical resilience, while we've shown them new ways to approach problems." Tech leader Dale, who had become the head of joint research projects, displayed their latest statistics. "Technological advancement has increased by 300% since our alliance began. The combination of human creativity and Razak thoroughness has revolutionized everything from ship design to medical treatment." A council member raised an objection. "But what about the military implications? Your combined fleet is now the strongest in known space." "True," Reed acknowledged. But we've used this strength to establish the first effective anti-piracy patrol network. Trading vessel attacks have decreased by 89% in protected sectors. Dr. Miller, now the chief of xenobiology studies, stepped forward. More importantly, we've begun sharing our combined knowledge of survival in extreme conditions. 3 previously struggling colonies have been saved by applying Earth-based adaptation techniques and Razak protective measures. The Chamber's mood shifted as the implications became clear. What had started as a feared alliance of powerful species had become a force for stability and progress in the galaxy. "We are not here to conquer," James assured the Council. "We're here to explore, to learn, and to help others survive." Reed nodded in agreement. "My people once thought being the strongest was enough. Humans showed us that true strength lies in adaptation and cooperation." The evidence was undeniable. In just 5 years, the Human-Razak Alliance had established colonies on 12 previously impossible worlds, developed new technologies for surviving extreme environments, created the galaxy's most effective search and rescue operation, started an interspecies education program sharing survival techniques, built the first successful multi-environment space stations. As the presentation concluded, a young Razak cadet approached the podium with a human student. Together, they represented the first graduating class of the Joint Space Academy. "We're called the Guardian Species now," the cadet said proudly. "Not because we're the strongest or the most adaptable, but because we use our combined abilities to help others." The human student added, "Earth taught us that survival isn't just about being tough. It's about learning, adapting, and working together. That's what we want to teach others." Reed watched them with pride. The future he glimpsed 5 years ago had become reality. Humans and Razaks weren't just allies. They were partners in helping the galaxy face its greatest challenges. James joined him at the window afterward, both looking out at the stars. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" he asked. "When you first discovered Earth?" Reed shook his head. "We thought we were finding equals. Instead, we found something better. We found partners who could make us better than we were alone." And that, James said with a smile, is the most human lesson of all. It's not about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about learning from each other and growing together. The stars seemed brighter somehow, as if they too were ready for this new era of exploration and cooperation, led by the species who had mastered survival in their own unique ways.